Welcome back to Briggs on Books. We have a day of interviews with authors from all over the world, one from the UK, one from Scotland, one from Canada, and our next guest, who's been on many times because he's a very interesting guy, Ken Percival, all the way from California. Ken, welcome, Ken. Are you you're in your car? Are you driving up the 99?
Yeah, well, maybe heading that direction. Yes, yes. So good morning.
And you're just north of us. You're in Merced, Modesto.
In Merced, that's right.
In Merced. Ken, we've been talking a little bit about your book. In fact, here's the cover. Is it Tune Tavern?
Tun Tavern.
Tun Tavern. How many times? We even rehearsed it and I got it wrong. Now, this is, what do you call a Vela? Something on
the Vela Books with Amazon.
Yes. Say that again. What's the word? No Vela?
Yeah, the Vela Books.
Vela Books.
Kindle Vela.
And what does that mean? You release it a little bit at a time?
Short story format. It's aimed to be able to kind of have 500 to 600 words for a chapter.
Okay.
And then you get to the next story.
And this is out already, and you find it on Amazon?
That's right. So using the 321book.shop, if you go to that website, it's going to prompt you to put in your Amazon account information so that it will take you out to the first several Vela stories.
Okay.
And then as you read along, if you want to continue, then you would add the Kindle Vela subscription to the Amazon.
Great. Now, I just went to the 321book.shop. That's the website, 321book.shop, and it just popped up. It was very easy to get there and very easy to go to it. And I think there's a little excerpt on the main page that you get to read about this also.
Yeah, with Tun Tavern, it's historical fiction, but telling the story about the Colonial Marine Corps, how they came to be, sort of where this goes. It introduces you to characters that you might not have known about. The founding fathers, the unsung founding fathers in the American Revolution. The very beginning of it takes place in Kew Palace in England, and it's a scene with Benjamin Franklin meeting the king and sort of really stirring the pot, getting information that allows him, and so this is all fictionalized, of course. But there's elements of truth to it. And it puts Benjamin Franklin front and center of being the pot stirrer for starting the American Revolution.
Now, pretty much, it's a fictionalized version, but it's a true story. You had to have done a ton of research.
There is. He was the Postmaster General.
Yeah.
And so there were numerous meetings that he took with King George. It goes into some details. One little nugget in the information is about being able to measure the displacement of the schooners in the water. And so if you ever look at pictures of the old schooners, you'll see displacement markings. And it wasn't until about Benjamin Franklin's era that Great Britain introduced these markings to kind of discern how much weight was being carried on the schooner. And so I attribute to him that idea for the king to be able to get the sense of how much commerce is happening based on the weight load and the displacement in the water of the ship.
Amazing. I never would have thought about that. I never would have thought of that. Now, this has also discusses the founding of the Marine Corps.
The Colonial Marine Corps. Samuel Nichols was the commandant that John Adams signed to make him the first officer, the first commandant of the Marine Corps. And so his role was being able to find 200 Marines to go to Nassau out in the Indies and be able to raid a British site for gunpowder. And that was sort of his first and only battle that he was actually involved with. And then his role became more of an administrator, making sure that there were funds and sort of if you think back to the American Revolution, the colonies really didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so it really is that story of how do you do something bootstrapped? And, there's plenty of, you can read all about Valley Forge in looking at in the history books, and it really clearly spells out that the colonies had to scrape together funds and finally get some assistance from France.
That's right. Now, and how does this particular tavern, tie into this whole story?
The Tun Tavern was one of those places where many of the colonists, folks that were involved with Masonic Temple and the Masons, they would meet there for their Mason meetings, and it sort of just became a converging point for the Colonial Congress. So before they got to Philadelphia, the founding hall, you had Tun Tavern.
Tun Tavern.
The place that everybody, a big enough space, people could have those conversations, and of course, with a little bit of alcohol being served, everybody loosened up their feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
It got a little dicey, maybe.
Now, is Tun Tavern still there?
It's not. If you go to Philadelphia, you'll find that there is a posting for it that was something that was hosted by the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps calls Tun Tavern, this is where the Marine Corps was founded. So you'll notice that there's a street plaque indicating the kind of approximate spot. It now sits under, the original place sits under 95, Interstate 95.
I'll be darned. I'm going to do a trip to Philadelphia soon myself, a historical journey to take a look around, which I've never been to. Now, tell me about the Kindle Vella program. Do you write the whole book at once, or do you write a chapter at a time?
Yeah. So I went through and before I published it, I put together the stories that I wanted to be able to tell about the founding and colonial Marine Corps, and then it segments it into between 500 to 850 words. So little segments, they're almost like chapters, but really it's great because for folks that have limited time, it allows them to get into an interesting story and then kind of stop for a moment and continue reading at a point that's more convenient for them.
Yep. That's great. It's very convenient, very short. It's not as daunting as picking up a big old thick book on a subject and trying to chisel your way through that. Do Marines find this book particularly appealing to them?
So some of the Marines I spoke with are very familiar with the story of Tun Tavern.
Yeah.
This takes it even further down because I'm using a little imagination to create sort of the players of, who was all involved with this, and really kind of digs deeper. And what's kind of quirky about this is that you're going to recognize a lot of names that are familiar, but then you're also going to find out more details about these side players.
Names we may never have heard unless you've already done research into the subject. We may never have heard some of these names.
That's right. See, and even with Benjamin Franklin, he sort of published a nom de pen, and so early on in his writings, he had different names that he represented just to be able to get written in the colonies.
Right.
And so he couldn't use his real name because he was the Postmaster General at
right.
some point, in the lead up to the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, just to get my head straight about this, he worked for the king. Is that correct?
He reported to the king for the operations of the post center that was within the colonies.
Right.
And so much of his travel during the 60s and 70s, kind of leading up into the late 1700s, he was making visits to France and going to England. And so it was sort of, in a way, he was kind of playing both sides of it. Right. Even though that France wasn't necessarily directly involved with conflict with England, he sort of was definitely being able to find ways to interact with both.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I knew that Benjamin Franklin was our first Postmaster General, but I just assumed the country was formed, and then they appointed Benjamin Franklin as Postmaster General. I didn't realize he went all the way back to when he was, I guess, a British subject in America.
Yeah, his story began, early on in Boston. That's where he grew up, was in Boston, and then made his way to Philadelphia. He became a publisher, and you hear, I think that people, when they think about Benjamin Franklin, they think about the guy that flies the kite in the in the lightning storm.
Right.
And you think about all of these different inventions. So I write a little bit about his inventiveness. One of the things being he had hand paddles for swimming. And so I kind of detail out about how he was able to be the front runner in developing propellers for boats, because it talks about how he's able to put together a mechanism to propel these boats that are going up the Fishkill River.
Amazing. Yeah, he's an amazing man. Now, do you have another book out or something else going on?
Yes, now I'm working, so it's conceptual right now, a graphic novel, sort of a little, it kind of steps back to the 1960s for a cab driver in New York City. So it takes sort of a kind of satirical kind of viewpoint of a cab. And it sort of is, if you ever think back to Friends, Lisa Kudrow's character, she had a song that she sang, kind of was popularized by Taylor Swift, Smelly Cat.
Yeah.
So there's a whole story behind Smelly Cat.
Okay.
So the name of this graphic novel is Smelly Cab.
Cab. Smelly Cab.
Cab. Smelly Cab. C-A-B. Nice. So instead of Smelly Cat, it's Smelly Cab. And so it's this take of what, it was like riding with a cabbie in New York City, in Manhattan.
Right.
And so it's a graphic novel kind of with depictions of the old, think back to the 1950 looks of the old cabs.
Yeah.
Oh. And sort of kind of that whole getting into a cab was you'd have a conversation with somebody. And then you'd pick up all of the different, depending on what part of town, the delicatessens, bagels.
Yeah.
So you have all, it was a different place. It wasn't, in kind of going there, it goes back to kind of really building out this 4D sense of a place. You think, these days we have high definition television. You can watch a football game, but you're still not at the point that you're engaging all of your senses. So this graphic novel tries to find a way to depict kind of all of the senses.
Now, are you doing the illustrating?
So I'm working with different partners to be able to put together this story and find unique ways to be able to engage all that sensory just with aromas, and figuring out how to be able to do that in a way so that people really can truly connect, step back in time a little bit through this graphic novel. Yeah,
that's neat. I rode many cabs in New York, and it was quite an experience, and it sounds like you're going to bring that experience to a new generation. There's not a lot of cabs in New York anymore. It's all Ubers and things like that.
Well, yeah, and it's the great thing about it was the conversations you could have with these folks. I'm sure you can probably think and about anyone in particular that you probably walked away learning something.
We did. I always talk to the cab drivers, and over the years it was amazing how they changed from being New Yorkers to maybe from India or something like that. The accents and everything changed over a few years. And I don't know if you can think back, but recalling kind of that sensory kind of New York was kind of a very, very much a eatering town. Right. It was all about kind of you'd go from one community to another, and you'd pick up smells of turmeric to all of these different things. And so that's kind of the fun part of doing a graphic novel, is trying to figure out how do you convey that sense that you really have to explore. Yeah, there's lights, there's sounds, there's smells. There's a lot to it back then. Ken, we're running out of time. I can't wait for the graphic novel Smelly Cab to come out. And and I'm going to put back up here again the cover of Ton Tavern. And I'm glad you're on, because last time you were on, I said, I'm going to read that because that's what I'm very interested in. So I will this time, I promise, Ken. For our viewers, go to 321bookshop, 321book.shop. It's a web address. Believe me, I just went there, 321book.shop. Any last thoughts for our viewers, Ken?
The Kindle novella is a great read. It's quick, and you can pick it up where you left off.
That's good. You put it down for weeks or months and go right back to it.
That's right.
Thank you, Ken, for coming on. And I know you're busy. You're out driving, and you took the time to come talk to us. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. And for our viewers, stick around. We have another author right after this.